Welcome back to Nick Lenz's movie review, episode number 81. Yes, reviewing the 11th James Bond film, which also happens to be the fourth film for this particular guy, Roger Moore. This is Moonraker, released in 1979. 40 years ago. Yep, 40 years this film was released. This is also noteworthy for being the final film that Lewis Gilbert directed for this particular franchise, because with the next film, where he has only up until View to a Kill, it's the same director. Yep, with this film, it pretty much has... This film is noteworthy for people accusing it of basically being a retread, well, a little bit, of The Spy Who Loved Me. In some ways it is, but like with Spy Who Loved Me, it's an in-name only adaptation of the novel. Aside from Bond and the M6 regulars, the only person from the novel actually in the movie is, of course, Hugo Drax. Played, of course, by Michael Lonsdale. Now, it's actually something behind the scenes, that most of this film was shot in France. The reason why? Because apparently the British tax got really high in the late 70s. So, they want to go someplace a little more cheaper to shoot the movie. So, they shot in France. And they finally think, okay, we're shooting in France, let's cast a French actor in the movie. Enter Michael Lonsdale playing Hugo Drax, which I think he does a really good job playing Hugo. He does a really good job with the character. And I do agree, he's probably one of the best Bond villains of all time. Heck, he frequently appears in Bond video games. This film is also noteworthy, not only for Lewis Gilbert's last time he did this film series, but also it's the return of Jaws. Yep, portrayed once again by Richard Kiel. In his last film appearance. Now, Richard Kiel himself will reprise the role of Jaws in the Everything or Nothing video game Just Do a Couple Grunts. And that's it. The actor himself has since passed away. Yeah, he passed away just a few years ago. Apparently, he also was suffering from gigantism because the guy was really freaking tall. He always had pretty much looked like he had the same look the whole film, just the white shirt, no tie, suspenders, and gray pants. Yeah, that was his look for 2 movies. Also, they did some new things in the movie. But let's talk about the beginning of the movie. The movie begins kind of similarly to that of the last film. Something is stolen. In the last film was Submarine. Now, Lewis Gilbert, this is the 3rd film he's done, opens up with an object being stolen. In Twice, it's rocket capsules. In The Spy Who Loved Me, it's freaking submarines. This time, it's a space shuttle. Well, at least this time they're not doing the same exact thing last time. They're not basically stealing by having something bigger than it swallow it. This one they have, and this is particularly very weird. Okay, they have a space shuttle clamped onto top of a 747. Now, yes, this is a actual method to transport space shuttles. Because the space shuttle, the American space shuttle, sometimes when they didn't land at Cape Canaveral, they will in fact transport these things back to Cape Canaveral from either California or Texas via 747. Apparently this thing was also fully fueled and able to be activated while it was still on top. And of course the plane itself was destroyed. They did follow up with this thing briefly a couple times in the movie. And of course M, with this almost very similar thing, just getting up, asking about Bond, was Bond finished mission yet? So he's on his last legs. And you see him making out with a woman, just like last time. The only difference is, basically, they're not in the middle of having sex. Nope, they just make out, and then she brings out a gun, and the pilot is a bad guy for some reason. Yeah, and they have a brief scuffle on the plane. The stewardess basically disappears, possibly died. They don't really say exactly what happened to her. They basically has a tussle with the guy in the air. I have heard this is actually was really shot in the sky. This particular scene, yeah, it was completely legit. Though it was mostly done via stuntmen, with Roger would do some close-ups, but yeah, mostly this was done via stuntmen. And of course, Richard Kiel, and of course Jaws at the beginning of the action, somehow he hit in the plane. It's never explained of where the heck he was. It just, oh, here's Jaws back, and there's no explanation for it. Yeah. He basically pushes Bond out, like his appearance is basically Bond pushing him on a plane. Also looks like he's got shinier teeth. Yeah. It's actually explained in the novel how his teeth got this way. Apparently he got some accident involving his jaw, and when Stormberg first hired him, he basically has his mouth basically bit this way. So apparently he looked like he can barely eat. I'm like, if he bites something, doesn't bite something off or something, he probably has to be very careful. Apparently, he didn't speak last film, but in case you're wondering, does he speak in this film? Yes, he does. Somehow, even though that he's got metal teeth. Yep. He pushed him on a plane, buying stuff with the pilot in the sky, takes the parachute, no problem. The guy's basically still falling. He probably is dead, dropping from that far in the frickin' sky. That's like 100 feet in the air. I'm like, that's like rough, like about like 10 miles in the air. I'm like, yeah, he's dead. Bond, of course, parachutes. Of course, Jaws tried to activate his parachute, and then just by sheer coincidence, he lands in a circus tent. He's perfectly fine later. They jump to Botagos, which is a really good Botagos sequence. And of course, Bond arrives. Back home, like no problem. Basically, he has a brief by Q about this destruction of the plane. Of course, they can find the shuttlecraft. And it's like, okay, let's go visit Hugo Drax. Okay. And I at least got to praise Lewis Gilbert for this particular film. He did the same thing last film too. He didn't have people waiting for the main villain to show up. Yeah, not very long. We only show up he shows up maybe about 30 minutes in the movie. But at least we don't have to wait too long. Thank God for that. He goes, meets him, and he doesn't do an alias this time. Thank God. Yeah, at least this time they actually, when he gets a chance to meet Hugo Drax, he meets him at his house. By the way, there's nothing happens at his house. So, does it get blown up in the end? Nope, it does not get blown up, which I'm like, that's actually quite unique. Yeah, he goes to his house, kind of like how in Spy Love Me, you have Bond going to Atlantis, very similarly. The only difference is, this is not where the main villain's base is. This is a completely different location. Which I'm like, okay, so he beats him. Now, Bond is there simply as a representative of the British government. Not undercover. Okay, fine. And of course, the scene gets used to Mr. Chang. Yeah, an Asian assassin who also works as sort of like Drax's servant. I was like, oh, tea and cucumbers. And he says to him, look out, Mr. Bond. See, some harm happens to him. Oh boy, harm happens to him. He goes to the space program, meets Dr. Holly Goodhead. Yeah, this is probably by far, now, also another props to Lewis Gilbert. At least he doesn't have to make people wait a long period of time for the Bond girl to show up. Yeah, that was a thing with a lot of our directors' problem with their films. They basically take their sweet ass time before they finally introduce the main Bond girl. I mean, look at, let's say, in the first film. People had to wait until the last 30 minutes of the movie to get used to Honey Rider. At least in the case of the next film, we don't have to wait too long. I guess some directors basically learned, at least Lewis Gilbert basically did not make the same mistake with this one. At least in the case of Kissy, at least she was introduced roughly close to halfway through the movie. I mean, it wasn't toward the end. Yeah. At least got praise Lewis Gilbert for that. And of course, then over the course of Bond meets various women who basically are minor characters. They barely, I think one gets a couple lines. The rest of them pretty much nothing. Of course, Bond also has his first sex in the movie. He also sleeps with Drax's pilot. Gets his out of his safe, no problem. And he goes hunting later, and which bathroom? That bathroom over there? Okay. I think it's right here. Yeah. To dig it up here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyways, yeah, so he eventually goes to after he finishes up there, he also gets nearly killed by Chang via this spinning thing, which what I've heard I think this is also based upon an actual thing that NASA used to train their astronauts. I don't know because I never saw this thing except for like this is the only film one or two films I've seen this spinning thing in. The only other film I've seen this in is in Space Cowboys. Yeah. So yeah, tries it out, and of course he uses his little dark gun, which he gets from Q beginning of the movie. He uses it a few times, but the first time he uses it, he fires at a painting. It was like I think it was like King George IV's horse in his butt, which I thought was so funny. But it's not the last time you see him use the thing. No, he used it one more time in the movie. He used it like roughly like 3 times in the whole film. It's probably like the only gadget gives you more than once or twice. Yep. And of course, that's when of course there's some stuff at the mansion, and then he leaves, playing. So you do the whole thing of like shooting pigeons. I think it was like shock pull. I think it was, and of course Bond like think he missed. Nope, he actually has target, an assassin. And later on, well, that's how we leave with Chang. Basically, very sad moment. Basically, the woman basically grabbed her golf cart. Yeah, I do agree. She could have easily like, okay, she got fired. Okay, just have her use the golf cart to go back to the mansion, have her clean out her stuff, and leave. Nope, let's have her run from dogs and have her get eaten by dogs off screen. Yeah, it's by far a very dark scene. Yeah, you don't see this very much. And Bond doesn't come and save her. Nope, he just goes back in his car and goes to Venice. Yep, he goes to frickin' Venice. That's where he ends up next. And then he comes across the Glass Museum, which this is going back to it later. And he runs to Dr. Goodhead. And of course, this is where period of time which he finds a CIA agent. Which I'm thinking though, okay, if you're gonna use the CIA, like, why not have Felix Leiter pop up a movie? Yeah, I keep wondering, okay, you have the CIA and no Felix Leiter? Like, I'm like, I'm sure that, because Moore is basically, his version is interacting with Felix Leiter. Like, I'm thinking though, okay, she must work for this, she works for the CIA, figures out how to look at her gadgets. I'm like, I'm surprised, now many times, I'm like, okay, you must know Felix Leiter, because he's the only person I know who works for the CIA. He's never mentioned the whole movie. Yes, Felix Leiter is never even mentioned. I mean, Felix Leiter doesn't make a return to Living Daylights. Yep. And of course, after he finds out she's a CIA agent, they proceed to have sex. Yep. And then of course he comes back to Glass Museum later, and then he gets to fight with Chang, who's in a suit for kendo. Yep, with a kendo stick. And destroys a whole boatload of glass. Eventually, they lead to the top of the clock tower, and then basically fight. And Chang basically ditches the helmet and the katana and the kendo stick, switches to a chain. Yep, a steel chain trying to string a Bond, and he throws him out of the clock, and he lands right through a piano, and he says the line, "Play it again, Sam." Yeah, I think that was a line from the movie. I like the fact that he did that. And of course, then he goes to visit, and of course, prior to this, he follows like a scientist in this strange laboratory. And this is particularly very weird. The password to get into this laboratory is, believe it or not, the soundtrack to the Steven Spielberg film, Encounters of the Third Kind, which I have seen the film. It's a really good film. Why in the world? I don't know why. I think the only reason why I can think they threw it in there because it was a film that probably a lot of people did know of. So yeah, so why not make a reference to it? And then of course Bond goes in, basically see the little things they would basically play off later. These little globes filled over these tubes of gas. He takes one. Apparently, he actually leaves one on top. And then scientists just push across, and the whole room is full of gas. And then later on, Bond takes M and Frederick Ray, the Minister of Defense there, and goes to this same area, press the key code again, and I think it's laboratory, but nope, it's Hugo Drax's office for some reason. Yeah, this is never explained. It's like, okay, this is a laboratory, and from my look, it looks like it's the same location, and yet somehow Hugo Drax took time to suck out all the gas somehow. I highly doubt released in the atmosphere because that one's stupid at this point. They don't explain what this gas is until like toward the end of the film, which I do appreciate they do have some build up. And Frederick Gray's like, and of course he also during when he has battle with Chang, he come across this little thing in Venice, like Brazil, Rio de Janeiro, and Frederick Gray's like, huh, like I never made so much a fool basically coming in a room with a gas mask. Yep, so take your man off the case. Like, okay, take 2 weeks leave, go straight to Rio de Janeiro, where he runs into an MI6 contact, and it's implied he just basically just undoes the sash of robe, and it's implied these two had sex. It's implied. It's like, so Rio de Janeiro is like, maybe he's gonna get underneath the robe. Yeah, it's implied he had sex with this woman, and then he follows her to like a warehouse where stuff is basically being transferred, and then she runs into Jaws. Yep, she runs into Jaws. Yeah, she's an MI6 agent, not one of double O's, mind you. She has a gun, does not use it at all, but Jaws about to bite her, and then some people start dancing around, of course Jaws gets carried away, and Bond's like, did I tell you not to talk to strangers? Oh, and by the way, this woman is never seen again in the whole film. She's seen for this one scene, that's it. Then later on, Dr. Goodhead runs into Bond in De Janeiro, basically via some telescope thing, and then they take the cable car down, and of course Jaws gets on another cable car, and of course gets trapped, and of course Bond sees who it is. He's like, I should have known. And Dr. Goodhead is like, you know him? Not socially. His name is Jaws, he kills people. And Bond does it? He probably should say, okay, his name is Jaws, and he's a hitman. That would have made a heck of a lot more sense to say, his name is Jaws, he kills people. So what? You do, you're a frickin' spy. That's almost bothered me for years by that stupid line. And then Bond and Dr. Good have a brief fight with Jaws, which I appreciate though you have Dr. Goodhead actually be a competent fighter. Yeah. They don't show basically like more of this until like much later. And they get off like no problem, and then of course they get on. And they get trapped in the ambulance. They get tied up, and of course Dr. Goodhead uses her pretty face to fool people, and of course Bond gets out. But Dr. Goodhead gets taken, and then he basically just walks on a rope briefly after get away from the people, and then we have a jump cut. In a way, yeah. As for how in the world, now this part is never explained. It's like, okay, you just walk up the road, and then cut to Bond riding a horse with a poncho and a Mexican hat. It's like, what did he do? Fly to Mexico? I mean, this is Brazil. Did he walk all the way to frickin' Mexico? I don't know. They never explain this at all. I mean, it's not explained via dialogue of how this cut happened. It's like, okay, yeah, money pays away a different courtyard. We also see something we see play later. Another thing, laser guns. Before I continue, Kelly Brockland documentary for this thing says, oh, this is not science fiction, it's science fact. Really? Do we have a space station of space that looks like a frickin' city? Do we have gravity generators on the space station? Do we have laser guns? No, you frickin' lied to your audience about that. That's bullcrap. Yeah, he says it right in document and behind the scenes stuff on here. Yep. And let's see. And they talk about this special flower that's supposed to be seen, and Bond goes to the area. And first he gets to be a boat, runs into Jaws. Jaws goes to a waterfall. Bond sort of loses the boat that turns into a paraglider, and he goes to the place. Gets there, not much of a problem. I mean, it's minor. He runs through all the minor female characters, not Dr. Goodhead, in this scene. And he just proceeds to fall in the water, has a battle with a snake, gets killed with a pen. Yeah, he kills with a pen, which he actually took from Dr. Goodhead. Yeah, so a gadget he stole from her. And then it's like, okay, then Jaws picks him out of the water, and he runs into Hugo Drax. Asks some really good questions, like, one more question, Drax. Why did you steal your own space shuttle? Because I needed it. One of my soldiers developed a default. Okay. That's the only fault we have at the beginning of the movie, which, Yeah. And of course, take Mr. Bond someplace warm. He needs someplace to warm himself up after his dip. And where did they take him? Right underneath the frickin' space shuttle. Where they run Dr. Goodhead, because he unties her pretty quickly. And Bond is able to, well, via his watch, takes out some plastic, some claymore, put it on this grate, blow it up, run through quickly without even getting scorched, and eventually they steal a space shuttle, and then they fly to space. Where they see the thing that was seen frequently in the trailer. I've seen the one trailer for the movie. Yeah, this space station, which apparently, get this, apparently no one knew this thing was up here. How? They jam all the radar. Yep, they jam the radar. So they sneak aboard, not much problem. Of course, they see what the cargo is. Oh, it's Noah's Ark operation. Okay. They don't explain what this is until later. Yep. They're like, and of course they screw around a bit, and of course they hear Hugo Drax's speech about these particular people be the start of a new super race. By the way, these people are never seen again. Yeah, it is completely unknown what happened to them, especially what happened in the final battle. And then, of course, Bond and Dr. Goodhead just walk to the radar jamming room, beat the crap out of the people there. It's like, how'd you know all those moves? Catholic school. Okay? And they take out the radar jamming system, no problem. And then all of a sudden the American military is like, oh crap, there's a space station up there. We gotta go up there and send our Marines up there to blow the place up. Because that's not one of ours. And of course they call up General Gogol. Yeah. It's like, oh, it's not one of ours. Oh yeah, and by the way, in this particular scene, it was supposed to be Triple X in bed with him. Yeah. But this is actually his secretary. I'm like, Gogol, you're going out with your young, smoking hot secretary. Good for you. Yep. And of course, the Americans like, okay, we want to start war over this, and Gogol agrees. Okay. And of course, they send up a bunch of Space Marines. Yep. They send them up, and then we have this, and of course, then of course they have, it's like Drax is like, okay, how the heck they know we're here? And of course, later on, after they get away, and then Jaws catches them, and that's when they have, well, then they get away, and of course, Bond gets captured by Jaws. Of course, he gets a chance to punch Jaws one more time, and eventually they try to get by Bond. Of course, that's when they attack the Marine shuttle. It's like, but shoot it, and Bond's like doing this, like, I think I'll press this button, and of course, knocks up the gravity all place. Eventually goes forward, and of course, Bond, and of course, Jaws. I should point out though, I forgot to point this out though, when it comes to that cable car scene. Yeah, apparently, somehow, I'm not sure how in the world this is. He runs the woman, becomes this blonde woman becomes his girlfriend. Yep, and she pops on the space station. And he's like, interesting. Let me expel him. Yeah, there's other the other way, and of course, well, about to kill him, and of course, Jaws is like, no, I'm not gonna do it, and of course, he turns against him. And that was when, of course, the Marines showed up. That's when, of course, Bond knocks out the gravity. Of course, you have Hugo Drax, basically his hair get messed up because of it. Yep. And then we have the best scene in the whole film, the space battle, where they have the Marine just have a couple of divisions just go out into space with their laser guns, and we have Drax's men, and they have this big, humongous shooting gallery in space. Like, a couple of them get flown into the frickin' sun. Yes. Completely know what happened to people's bodies. And then they manage to get on board. Not much of a problem. And of course, Bond meets up with them. Of course, they see Dr. Goodhead. They're like, okay. Yeah, and of course, this is led by an American colonel. And then, of course, the place becomes a shooting gallery. Yep. Very reminiscent of what happened in the last film, Annual twice. Basically, shoot the place up, and somehow the place explodes. Yep. And of course, Bond chases after Hugo Drax. Of course, this is after the gravity was restored. And he's like, I'm going to kill you nice and slowly in this airlock. And of course, Bond just does this. Has one hand up, and the other hand goes up, and the dart goes right into Hugo Drax. He's like, oh. He's like, and Bond's like, take a giant step, mankind. Opens up the airlock and shoves Drax right out. Shoves up right into space, killing Drax by freezing to death. Yep. And then of course, place starts exploding. And of course, also while this is going on, Draxman just shoot out 3 of these globes. And of course, they also take time to take out the other globes from him. And of course, Bond tells the Colonel's like, Colonel, remember, your mission's completed. Tell your men to leave immediately. And of course, they all leave. Of course, Bond's like, we gotta take out those globes really quickly. And of course, they just have to come across Moonraker 5, which was Drax's personal space shuttle, which has a laser on it. Yep, they get on board. They have Jaws help them out. Which apparently the Dolly, I think her name is, helps them out very pretty easily. Apparently she's a scientist. Well, because she's got glasses, so why not? And helps them out, basically gets them undocked. And of course, they later on you see Jaws with her just having some champagne. And of course, part of the station pops up, and of course, they get picked up by by the Marines. And it says, we picked up a tall man and a blonde woman. Yeah, they'll be fine. Yeah, and of course, then they take out the 3. The first 2, not much of a problem. The other one was a slight problem because Bond actually fired too early. And of course, he fired it manually. Of course, they blow it up pretty easily. And then it's like, okay, their job's done. Let's have sex. That's probably like, that's what Bond's probably thinking. Like, yeah, and of course, proceeds to have sex with Dr. Goodhead. And of course, the Colonel's, of course, the Emma's there. And of course, very similar ending in the last film. It's like, okay, yeah, Emma's like, okay, we're going to send this to the White House and Buckingham Palace. And they turn the screen, and there's Bond and Goodhead already had sex. And Bond looks together like, And M's like, oh no, not again. Yeah. Of course, Bond puts the thing on the camera and says, and Dr. Goodhead says, take me out of the world one more time. And that's the film ends. Awesome film, some minor plot holes, but is by far a really good movie. And I thoroughly enjoy watching this. I mean, I didn't watch it recently, but this movie is a fun movie. It is really, really good. The only minor plot hole is, I would say, is like the only thing they don't really explain is what happened to those supermen they were bragging on about. Yeah, they never explain what happened to them. Also, what happened to the people with that control center in Brazil? Excuse me. Yeah, they don't explain what happened to them. Are they still down there? Never explained. Yeah. But here's the interesting thing. This was actually not supposed to be next movie after Spy Who Loved Me. For Your Eyes Only is supposed to be next. But here's the thing. The only reason I picked this movie next over For Your Eyes Only is because of Star Wars. And believe it or not, the same year this film came out, we had Alien and Star Trek The Motion Picture released the same year. Yep. Great movie this is. I know that Film Brain also did a review of this movie on his channel. He did it like when Spectre came out a few years ago. I mean, I do disagree with some of his opinions when it comes to this movie, but it is a great movie to watch. Yep, so that's it for this particular review. I have one review coming. I'll do it soon after I put this video up. And that'll be a review of For Your Eyes Only. Yep, until I see you next few. Bye.